It's the Redeye stream number 83. Better late than never.
Just wants a ball in his mouth.
Yeah. Well, no, and you guys watching, you didn't get to see before we went on air. He's all dressed up in like a Star Trek outfit. I don't know if he's going to a convention or something, or I don't know. Oh, fuck you, boy. 40.
Is
that why he has the ball gag in?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it.
Well, that's like you're wearing Jordy's visor backwards. I just don't think you know how to put it on right.
No, I can put it on here. Watch this. Look.
No.
Is this what you're talking about?
Yeah. There you go, man. There you go. So, no, we're going to open up with something just as ridiculous as that bullshit. Everybody in the media swooning over Kim Jong-un's sister. Like, really? Come on. I thought the Olympics was about shitty sports that nobody cares about.
No. I saw an article today. It wasn't that long ago, maybe about a couple of hours. I don't know if I can find it again, but apparently they were saying how immigrants do the best work, and it was showing a picture of one of the North Korean figure skaters. Yeah, so they're going all out on it, and then apparently she's better at diplomacy than Mike Pence, who's currently at the Olympics, and
oh God.
You realize
I don't know.
You do realize that she is the North Korean's minister of propaganda, don't you? I'm not joking.
No shit. That's amazing.
She is the North Korea's minister of propaganda. So she should know how to talk to people.
Yeah,
but it's just...
Oh, God.
I don't get it. I mean, like, they're now holding up South Korea, or North Korea, sorry, as some sort of fucking awesome, brilliant place to live. And I honestly, I have no words for it. I never thought I'd see the day when a dictatorship was lauded as one of the best places on earth. You know.
They've been saying that for decades. Haven't you been watching the media? The mainstream media has been lauding tyrannical frickin' left-wing dictators for at least 40 frickin' years.
No, I have to take issue with that. I mean, come on, the CIA only tried to kill Castro a few dozen times. You know, you can't say
that, but that was like close to 60 years ago now.
Don't say that, because that makes me feel really old, so shut up.
I have a question before we just forget about the whole Castro thing. How the fuck did the CIA fail that many times, MC? How inept are these people?
Well, the first problem is that the CIA was using contractors, basically people that expected to do this. And the one really cool way to try and kill Castro was to poison his cigars. And it just turns out that the son of a bitch is tough.
Yeah.
He was a tough SOB, so he survived that. So, I mean...
Or did he? Did he? Maybe Castro was a set of triplets.
Huh?
You got
him,
two,
his
but...
brother Raul, and he was a twin.
Yeah. Well, and the problem with stuff like that is, like, when you're trying to poison someone or like exploding cigars and wild shit like that. I mean, he's undoubtedly got people eating his food before he does. You know, he's got people maybe taking a few puffs off a cigar before he even touches it. You know, I mean, these people they know they're wanted, and they know that people want them dead. They're bound to take every precaution necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. And to get back, though, to the Olympics, she literally is the propaganda minister. And the news outlets would know this. Why are they swooning over her like they are?
Because she represents a leftist dictatorship. This isn't new, folks. Do you guys remember the freaking Gorbasms people were having when Gorbachev came over?
No, I wasn't
You ought to
alive.
take a look at what the press was like then. Oh my lord! They thought that oh, finally we have somebody that's going to rein in Ronnie Reagan. Okay, how dare he walk out on Reykjavik? Oh, he's going to bring us a nuclear war. We had a U.S. senator basically communicate with the Soviets in letters saying they would help work with them to make sure that they reined in the president of the United States.
Well, now that sounds like
out of control. That's how out of control these people were during Reagan's time. What makes you think that this is anything new, or this is something as a surprise?
Well, I have a question. So, how much of this cooperation, or how much of this applauding of leftist regimes, how much of this is, propaganda to support the left versus how much of this is, how should I say it, applauding good behavior and applauding cooperation with the U.S. government?
It's not applauding good behavior at all. If anything else, it's they're more open about their effluent praise.
But MC, when it comes to the Olympic thing, they're posturing for reunification, and even South Korea is like, yeah, we'll talk to you. And I don't know, man. Do you want these guys all to sit down in the room together, or is that just going to stall stuff until they get their real nuclear weapon?
Well, they've got a real nuclear weapon.
I mean, one that will hit the mainland. I mean, the ballistic missile technology to nuke my house. Okay. Hey, you laugh, but I'm on the West Coast, man. This is serious for me. These are the only people that can actually kill my ass. Everybody else is aiming for you fuckers over on the
east. You really think that the Russians and the Chinese won't just make a go of getting the whole nation state? That somehow you're safe. That it's only the wild ass North Koreans that are going after freaking Oregon.
Hey, they're the ones directly saying we want to hit the West Coast. All right, they're the ones I have my issues with right now. Okay, you say you want to directly kill me and my family, then fuck you too, buddy.
Yeah, I don't think Putin or Kim Jong-un watched the Redeye mod. I don't think you're in that much danger.
The North Koreans have always had a policy that they would use force to reunify the peninsula. And if it comes to that, the fact is that we have never signed a peace treaty with the North Koreans. It's only been an armistice. They refuse to sign a peace treaty. There are times when
they're still at war.
So I mean, there are a number of factors there. Now, the new South Korean president is more left-wing. He wants a dialogue with these guys because he thinks he can get a dialogue with the North Koreans. Of course, everybody, in their right mind knows that the North Koreans can't be. You can have a dialogue with them, but they're not going to live up to any of their obligations, just like they haven't lived up to any of their obligations in the past, right? So their word on something is worthless, aside from the fact that they'll use force. And they're willing to use force on their own populace. If a country is willing to use force and murder and butcher its own populace, it's not going to have any qualms about murdering and butchering other people, even U.S. citizens, which, frankly, they did recently, and there were no repercussions from.
Well, is that kind of why South Korea has postured away from the U.S. a little bit? Like, no, that
isn't. The reason you had a changeover in the government in South Korea has more to do with the local politics that were going on at the time than it has to do with trying to get a standard policy to get away from the United States policy. Right? It has to do with corruption from the previous prime minister, who they now are trying and putting in jail, along with her entire cabinet. Frankly, she was kind of a loose cannon. She was, seeing psychics to make policy decisions and so forth. She had her own quote unquote guru that would give her policy advice. All right. So, I mean, from that standpoint, okay, what you're basically seeing is just a shift due to local politics, not necessarily in international politics.
That's not a cultural thing for them, though. Gurus and psychics and stuff like that. Would that be normal in that society for her to do that?
I don't think it was normal by the way that people reacted. By the way her nation reacted.
Well, I thought it was corruption, as in she was selling political offices or doing certain things.
I'm sure that was all a part of it as well. That all fell into it, right? So it's all part of the the whole kind of syndrome. I guess you kind of claim it or look at it from the same kind of idea of what happened to the czars, right? The accusations about the czars.
But I don't believe that the Olympics is really going to make a long-term change here. They'll swoon over the propaganda minister of North Korea. I can't believe that. I didn't know that. That's insane. And then they'll move on because North Korea is not going to stop their threats. They're not going to stop testing nuclear missiles. They're not going to stop testing intercontinental ballistic missiles. I mean,
no, they're not. They have no intention of doing that.
Yeah, so whether the media likes it or not, they're still the bad guys, even for me. And
the media looked at this. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rad.
Oh, I'm sorry. I basically just dropped something.
Oh, okay. I didn't want to interrupt you if you wanted to say something. The media is looking at this as a twofer, right? One, they don't like Trump, so they're going to stick it to Trump, and two, they like left-wing regimes, so they're going to try and prop them up. So, for as far as they're concerned, with at least the U.S. media, all right, they have no compunction about this. And to be honest, they wanted a major distraction after the gaffe, all right, by one of their own, where basically he said that the South Koreans are grateful for the help the Japanese have given them to make them a prosperous country.
Oh, don't the Japanese and Koreans not really like each other much?
I don't think the Japanese care about the Koreans one way or the other, but I can tell you right now, the Koreans absolutely hate the Japanese without any kind of equivocation at all. If you walk down their bazaars, you will frickin' see them selling T-shirts that show an atomic weapon going off in the background of a B-29 saying "Made in America, tested on Japan."
Yeah.
How can you not like, how can you not like, fucking anime Asian schoolgirls? I mean, I'll have to talk with these North Koreans.
So, MC, I basically just want to ask one question. I really need to go to bed, but what's your view on the situation, or what do you suggest that should be done about North Korea?
I think that unless there are several tripping points, all right, I think they have to be watched. I think at this point in time, you've got to try and use diplomacy on the two big nations that border them, meaning Russia and China, and try and force them to end their programs, or at least be willing to join and let it be known that they're willing to. Not necessarily on a public face, but in private meetings with the North Koreans, let it be known that if they step over certain tripwires, that there's going to be consequences from a military action, and it's going to include them. That would be the best case scenario. Now, are we going to be able to do that? Hard to say. It's kind of unlikely, considering the history of the two nations. But at the point where they can put nuclear missiles on subs, at that point right there, if they demonstrate a sub-launched missile system that's effective, a true one, then all bets are off. You might as well prepare for war.
Yeah, I'm probably going to surprise everyone here now by saying I actually agree with you.
I mean, it's not a good scenario. Going to war in Korea sucks. All right. Right now, they're having the Winter Olympics in South Korea, right? And they're having probably the coldest Olympics on record. Okay, now think about fighting a war in the winter during that time frame. We've done it once. It sucked then. It'd suck again.
And no, that's why you don't fight a war. You just drop a nuke. Problem.
God, man,
But
I'm sorry, but you see, unlike MC, I actually care about the soldiers. Therefore, I would clear the way for them.
But here's what I actually believe would be the most effective way to do it, because I don't think an invasion would be smart. I'm pretty much more in the whole. I don't know if you guys have followed Styx's view on this, but I basically am very much in line with him on this. Whereas you should definitely give, like, the U.S. should definitely back South Korea and Japan, and maybe make South Korea, Japan, and maybe China do the whole boots on the ground part of the fighting, and then the U.S. could sort of be a deterrent in the background, taking out the air bases of North Korea and something like in the unlucky scenario of a war, of course.
Well, it'd be nice if they agree to that, but you got to realize that may or may not be an option.
Japan will agree. I believe anyway. I can't say definitively.
I think South Korea would agree too, because you got to remember the goal of North Korea and South Korea is actually the same. They both want to reunite the peninsula.
Well, the problem is whether the Koreans want to reunite the peninsula. Does China look at the reunited peninsula under South Korean leadership as a viable option? If they consider it viable, if they consider it okay, then yeah, then it's a possibility. But that
you could offer the Chinese like some parts of the northernmost land of North Korea.
Oh, the coal and stuff that they want or whatever, maybe.
Yeah.
But
so we'll
but what do you mean though?
Czechoslovakia?
No, but my question is, what do you mean the U.S. wouldn't really be involved? If we're flying stealth bombers and doing air raids, we are involved. If we're doing drone strikes all across the capital, we're involved.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that you wouldn't have soldiers on the ground, because you gotta remember that the North Koreans have been taught since birth that you guys are basically the devil's children. And so the second they, like, no matter if they were civilians or not, the second they see an American soldier, they would take up arms because they would be caring for the life.
Yeah, but I would like to point out, and the Middle East would explain this, they will hate American bombs just as much as they hate American soldiers. So, yeah, I mean, we're still going to get the same flack.
No, listen, I don't think the civilians would pick up arms and start fighting as much if they only saw South Korean soldiers. Then they would probably be more likely to stand by.
I'm skeptical. I was skeptical when I heard Styx's video on that as well. I think I commented that, because I really do believe blowback will happen either way. So if our military is more able to combat this and win it quickly, why not use it? I'm talking about our ground forces, as well as air support and bombardment from the sea. If you're not going to use nukes, then you're going to go all in and try and win it as fast as possible and unify and get the fuck out.
From a ground force perspective, what are you looking for? I mean, I hate to say this, but the United States' ground force capability, all right, on the Korean Peninsula would be somewhat limited. Right? It's not that we don't have troops. It's not like we couldn't utilize them, etc.
Do we have any armor there, MC? If you're able to answer that, if you know.
Oh yeah, we have armor, but the armor is limited. All right, into what you can't drive a tank up a sheer mountain. Okay.
Obviously, it's not Skyrim. You can't just hit the X button repeatedly.
So there's limited opportunities to utilize armor in certain regards, right? Armor is basically used in a variety of roles, but really more of a in this case would be an infantry support role. But even there's limited areas in which it could be worked at and be effective. All right, it's really not an armor type of environment. Artillery is a different matter. Now, we have decent artillery. We don't have as much of it as the North Koreans, but we got a lot of it. And we have air power. All right. Other than that, it's going to be an infantry war. And the question becomes really more of how well does the North Koreans fight within the cities, and what are they willing to tolerate? Because ground to ground, house to house fighting sucks. And they have
but after Iraq and Afghanistan, we're well skilled at it.
Actually, no. If you take a look at Iraq and so forth, yeah, we can do it. We have the skills to do it to a point, but it sucks and takes a long time. And the South and the North Koreans have a lot of men. And when you're defending a city like this, when you're doing city defenses, you don't need heavy artillery. You don't need, you can do pretty much everything you wanted to with small arms fire.
Well, that, and I mean, the problem with like going house to house and shit is that it's very messy, and you're looking at a very dense, very compact kind of environment where, you know, you step around the wrong corner at the wrong time, and, you know, half the guys in, you know, Squadron A are dead or something. So I mean, you know, and things like IEDs, they're more effective in these kind of close quarters environments in which you're kind of fucking about in. It's
not just that. It's the fact that when you go from house to house in these kind of environments, you're in clearing operations, right? Well, when you see movement, you shoot first. This is a war now. Okay, you shoot first, you ask questions later. So you're wiping out families, especially in the situation that you're dealing with the North Koreans, because they're not going to. I can guarantee you, they're not going to be prepared for it, and so they're not going to get out of the way. All right, so there's going to be, when people talk about civilian casualties, if you want to look at it from that perspective, all right, then you're going to see a lot, and they're going to be heavy.
Did you just drop the C?
No, I know, right? But see, you know, I don't want American troops in there, but wouldn't we be more suited to that type of warfare than, say, Japan, who hasn't fought a war since, you know, World War II, which they lost?
It would be a massive, massive mistake to allow Japan to bring in any kind of troops. Period. That would be, that's as bad, if not worse, than U.S. soldiers going in there.
We'll see, and that was Stix's, and that's what we're talking about, is Stix's idea, and I really take umbrage with it. I don't think it's a viable option.
No,
I believe if we're gonna do it, because we've been in armistice, not a peace, for over 50 years. If we're gonna do it, then we need to just finish the job we started back in the 50s.
Bring in the UN allies that we had, you know, put the Turks on the ground, let them run north.
on Camelback.
The Turks had a really fearsome force during the Korean conflict. They made quite a name for themselves. People forget the Turkish soldiers are not something to sneeze at. They never have been.
Well, and I'm sure that they, you know, have to adhere to the same kind of rules of engagement that we do. But I mean, let's be honest, they're probably less likely to be so forgiving. Not so much like American military.
Well, they adhere to the rules, but I would say the rules they play much looser with them than we do. What were you gonna say, Rat?
I still think that the ROK would pretty handily take down the DPRK if it came down to it.
The ROK is a strong enough force to take on, I think, the North Koreans.
Like if they had the United States as a deterrent, so that, like, the U.S. backing, so that Seoul wouldn't get, you know, nuked. Then I think,
but what about that, Rat? I know you have to leave soon. I want to ask you this. What about the initial artillery barrage that's going to ensue after the war starts? Right off the bat, Salah's getting hit. It's getting hammered right off the bat. Are they going to be able to get their troops over the border quick enough in a sneak attack to avoid that? I don't know if the South Koreans are up to the challenge, is my point.
I I'm going to say that I have a feeling MC would be able to answer that better than I would, but the ROK is basically a more powerful military nation than the DPRK. The DPRK is very primitive at this point. Their weaponry is really out of date, especially compared to like the US or the ROK. I do believe that South Korea would not really have a problem taking down North Korea.
I think you're underestimating what it would take to actually do that kind of warfare. There's a number of questions that could, to an extent, you're correct. Okay, first of all, the Republic of Korea's military, all right, is a first class military, all right. If we were giving them supplies and supplying them, all right, it'd be unlikely for the North Koreans to be able to stop them. Although the initial barrage in Seoul is going to take a toll. Okay, so the initial barrage would cause an issue. Now, most of that would be taken out in the first week or so of fighting with airstrikes and counter artillery fire, etc. All right, but it would take time to do it because they have so much of it. The question then becomes several. All right, one, how does China react? All right, does China decide they're going to support the North Koreans and give them supplies? All right, therefore replacing their usage one for one, because the North Koreans do have a large standing army. It's not as well equipped, that is true. All right, but you don't need a quote unquote well-equipped army to fight in the major cities. All right, how much fighting would they do? I mean, to be honest, you're not going to know that until the warfare begins. How dedicated are their troops? You're not going to know that till warfare begins. I personally suspect that if you decapitate the leadership in the early stages of the war, that the North Koreans will put down their arms fairly quickly. But that's just my assessment. There's no guarantee of that necessarily. All right. Go ahead.
Yeah, go on. Oh, okay. What I think would be sort of and this obviously what I'm going to say now does not take it doesn't take a lot of the details into account, but I think that what would be a viable option would be for the United States to take down the air bases and the docks of the DPRK, and simultaneously put diplomatic pressure on China for them not to intervene, and then let the South Koreans do the ground attacks.
Well, I have to bring up the first flaw in that. Okay, well, actually, maybe it's not a flaw. Who attacked first in this situation? Because China has said publicly, I don't know what they say in private, obviously, but publicly they have said if the United States and her allies make the first move, they are siding with North Korea.
Yeah,
that's the line. That's the line they drew in the sand. So
and since then, the Chinese relationship to North Korea has become more sour. So I think you would be able to make some leeway with them diplomatically.
I'm not sure, but I believe for the whole invasion idea to actually work, it needs to be an invasion. The United States and South Korea would have to move first, and they would have to move decisively. Know exactly what they're going to do.
I personally think invasion would be the stupidest thing to do.
The problem is if you give the North Koreans, right, the initiative, okay, a quarter of Seoul will get destroyed. It'll be a quarter of Seoul will get destroyed. Right? They have that much artillery. So if you give them the initiative where they can fire, 1/4 of Seoul will get destroyed. Okay, and several things will happen if that does. If the balloon goes up, several things will happen. But I want people to understand: 1/4 of Seoul will get destroyed, and that is where the major population of the South Koreans exists, as far as the civilian population. All right. I think between a quarter to a third of all of Korea is within the suburbs of Seoul. Okay, so you're talking a large casualty count of civilians. All right. Now, when will the North Koreans do something like that? If they think that they can win, number one, and two, they think that the United States will not intervene, or if they think that the Chinese will back them, should the United States intervene.
And that's the thing. By letting the sort of missile tests go on, you're also like kicking the can further down the road. That basically makes them get closer to getting their deterrent and say, hey, we are taking the ROK now, and you guys will not do shit to stop us from that.
Absolutely, Rat. I agree. And we've talked about the North Korea issue quite a few times. I doubt you've caught them because you joined us recently in the Discord and discovered my channel recently. So you probably missed them. But I was discussing that. When they're firing missiles at Japan and over Japan, they violated the non-aggression principle. At that moment, war should have already started. But we're appeasing them. We're drawing the line an inch over from where the original line was. And we've been doing that for over 50 years. Sooner or later, you got to hit the wall, and shit's got to pop off.
Today's problem, you can blame them on Bill Clinton that actually gave them the nuclear energy they needed. So, but I don't know. At this point, I'm just like thinking to myself that I don't really see what can be done. Like, I don't know. I just don't want to see North Korea get more dangerous, because at some point they are going to actually be a very real danger to everyone.
Well, I think it's kind of late for that, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't like the idea of everyone being basically held hostage to this, to Kim Jong-un.
I don't disagree with you, but I'm not sure how much can be done about it per se.
No, maybe not. I don't know. I still think that that both me and Styx has the right idea on how to sort of fix that problem.
Well,
I obviously would.
The problem is that it's wishful thinking to a large extent, because we don't know what the Chinese will do. All right? I agree with you that would be a great scenario, but there's no guarantees that scenario can play out. And
no, of course,
I think that
you guys basically can sort of like. For one thing, you can make economical pushes towards China. Basically, threaten them with that. If they even think about intervening, then you will economically crush them. You have the power. But second of all, I have a feeling that this might actually be why Trump is so friendly towards China. Why
I think one mistake you and Styx make.
Okay.
Is you overvalue, from a Chinese perspective, the economic issue. That you look at it from the perspective from a value perspective that isn't Chinese. All right. So the idea that it's a break on China, and it's a massive break on China. I'm not saying it isn't pressure and it doesn't work in our favor. What I'm saying is that value to the Chinese leadership, however, and that equation is going to be an equation that they developed themselves. And in the past, they haven't looked upon that necessarily in the same manner as you would expect other Western societies to look at. And an example of where that kind of calculation can go wrong, okay, is simply enough just look at World War I. Not World War II, World War I, where everyone was looking at this going, from an economic standpoint, there's no reason for Germany to actually kick off a war. But Germany didn't shy away from the war whatsoever in their support for their ally, which was Austria-Hungary. right? So the idea that, yeah, we economically, were they going to suffer? Yes. And economically, did the Germans suffer? Yes. I mean, the people were suffering greatly at the end of the war. And I'm not talking about the soldiers, obviously in the trenches where everyone was suffering. I'm talking about economically, the civilian population began to basically starve. All right. But the leadership was willing to kick that war off regardless of the consequences economically.
Yeah, but then again, Germany was looking to expand their empire at that point.
But that's hindsight. And to say that China is not looking to expand its sphere of influence, all right, is a dangerous gambit to make, especially considering their more recent provocative actions, such as building their islands and so forth in the South China Sea.
Yeah, you are making a good point, but in that case, I still think that it might be a good thing to maybe, like, I don't really like to talk a lot like this because I feel more imperialistic than I really am, but offer them some part of the North Korean lands with the rare earth that they want. I think that would be a good trade-off for them.
Well, go ahead, Benos.
Well, I was just going to try and throw 40 in here. He's been quiet for a minute. What do you think, 40?
Yeah, I actually I kind of agree with I agree with Rad, actually. I think if you're going to be involving other people in conflicts, there unfortunately has to be some form of incentive for people willing to actually participate in said conflicts. And I don't like imperialism all that much, but at the same time, it does have its aspects of give and take. And I think in this one specific instance that this kind of imperialism could actually be somewhat positive.
Well, what if it messes up, kind of like Britain making a deal with the Arabs, breaking that deal and creating Israel? That was a fuck up, and that was imperialism, and that was them giving up land that wasn't theirs. What if the same type of thing happened here?
Well, but the problem here is that when you're talking, and that's a good point you bring up, but the problem is that there was no collective consensus that involved multiple nations. This was, Britain going to a few select Arab peoples and saying, "Oh yes, we'll give you this." There wasn't. This was like kind of secret deals that weren't known to everyone else. If everything is out in the open and just like, all right, well, the Chinese get the northern half, they get some coal mines over here and some, a few small villages to the north and whatnot. I'm sure that, a majority of people would agree with that.
You do realize that the UN was deeply involved in the partitioning of that land that created Israel.
But, okay, so why I think this would actually work is, first of all, I think China sees the value of rare earth. And that I think they really want to capitalize on that. Second of all, I don't think, like, I don't know how to explain it. I had a very clear vision before I started.
No. I don't disagree with the ideas that it would be nice to do this. My question is strictly on one regard, which is, can you trust China to do these things?
Oh yeah, no,
everything relies upon.
I actually started remembering my point because of that. I think China is starting to grow tired of having to sort of protect their degenerate little puppy. I think they're growing tired of the nuke testings and whatever is happening in North Korea, and I don't think they would have too much of a hard time going against them as long as they could gain some of the land.
The other question then becomes whether or not South Korea is willing to tolerate that, and then even then the other wild card, because there's two wild cards. China's the first, and it's the biggest. China's the biggest wild card, but the other wild card is Russia. And
oh yeah, definitely.
Russia does have a border. In some ways, Russia, from a governmental standpoint, is closer to the governments in North Korea than even China is.
But basically, if the United States attacks North Korea, that would actually be Russia attacking North Korea, since the United States is a vassal state of Russia.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Trump.
No, but in all seriousness,
fake news.
When it comes to South Korea, I don't think they would have too much of a problem with it, mainly because they would no longer be under the threat of Seoul being destroyed by a nuke. Russia, on the other hand, I don't really know.
The one question from a Chinese, and this is far more important of China. See, from a Russian perspective, if the peninsula is unified under South Korea, I don't think that Russia would care one way or another. All right, because to them it would just be another nation. I mean, they're not threatened by Korea. They're not worried about an invasion from the Koreans, etc. But China, on the other hand, however, being the kind of communist country that it is, having the South Korea, a direct border with the South Koreans could become problematic. So the idea of partitioning North Korea to allow them to have access to the mining areas, to be honest, I don't know where those rare earth minerals reside. So I can't tell you what kind of partition or what the partition would look like. Kind of hard to say, to be honest. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit tired right now.
It is a very difficult issue. So, I don't have a problem with people being or disagreeing with me on this, because this is a very delicate issue, and we are standing in the middle of it, and I don't think anyone has the full perspective of what's actually going on.
Well, right, and we don't. And the other thing is at least you approach this from an idea of, okay, how these things work. My problem with Styx, on the other hand, is he's way too flippant about what a war would mean. He's way too flippant.
Yeah.
And the idea of how easy some of these conflicts can be, it doesn't take much to mire things down. And when you're talking house to house fighting, that's a fast way.
Vietnam.
Vietnam was not what you think it is. We won't discuss that right now.
But
no, they will get mired down in house to house and guerrilla warfare. And hasn't the world, especially the despotic world that is on the enemy list of the United States, learned from the Middle East? Don't you think they're ready for what is pretty much the modern day Roman fucking military? We have a certain way we want to fight, and that's how we fight well. And then we get mired up in changes.
It's a different situation in that you're talking. You can't compare methods of fighting, all right, that work, and what you're dealing with always. And the reason for that is a lot of things are very dependent upon how things will work from a cultural standpoint. All right, I don't foresee the kind of guerrilla warfare taking place from the North Koreans, because I don't think the North Koreans would be involved in it because culturally that's not a style, all right, that would work in their favor if they're trying to work in the certain regions. And also regionally, it's not as easy. I mean, you talk about a population that's used to not being able to move, not being able to, freedom of movement is very restrictive in North Korea. So they're not used to doing this kind of an activity. So it's not a natural flow to go into a kind of guerrilla movement. The reason you ended up with guerrilla type warfare in North Korea, or I mean not North Korea, but in Vietnam, has to do with terrain as well. All right, jungle fighting is jungle fighting. All right, if you live in a jungle,
the tunnel system, I got you. Let's not get too far off track.
Yeah, I'm just saying that from a cultural standpoint, these things don't necessarily mesh. the reason you have the kind of guerrilla, if you want to look at a guerrilla type of involvement in the Middle East, is because the Middle East, while we talk about these nations, still to this day are extraordinarily tribal in nature. The tribes exert a tremendous amount of localized power within the groups.
Well, yeah, and that's why the way they drew the boundaries of these countries in the Middle East made absolutely zero sense. It was a bunch of imperialistic Westerners drawing the map for people they don't even know and just playing fucking Risk on a fucking game board. It was ridiculous what they did after World War I.
I disagree with you.
It was insane.
I disagree with you because what other solutions were there? You know, sometimes bad solutions are the only solutions you got.
You didn't have to even break up the Ottoman Empire, really. You just had to make them pay restitution and put them in their fucking place. That's what worked for Germany, kinda. Well, not too much.
for a little while. So I am going to head off, but before I leave you guys, I just want to give you a philosophical question that you can chew on. So, and it's basically, so do you guys think that on the world stage, Trump would be seen as a silverback if the United States gets great at guerrilla warfare?
Yes.
And nobody got the joke.
No, we got the joke.
It wasn't funny at all.
I also analyze it from a very specific standpoint. You don't want to see what the United States is going to be like if it gets good at guerrilla warfare.
Like, and how many guerrillas are you going to release upon?
Do you realize what guerrilla warfare is? Where they basically pound the shit out of the enemy, and if some of their young get caught, they eat them.
So basically, Chicago.
Well, good repost.
And what about Paris? Is that something you could do?
No, that's great. Fucking Voice of One doesn't talk for 45 minutes. Just says 2 words, fucking Chicago, and that's it. He like made his fucking made his point. But, good job, boys.
I'm going to leave you. I think I've said my piece with this North Korea thing.
Good night, Rat.
Thank you for coming on, Rat.
Hopefully we won't get to the war part, but I think it looks very bleak right now.
I think we probably will end up getting to the war part, and I believe that the allies need to move first. No more appeasement for North Korea. And I'm a libertarian. It's hard to say that, but you have to draw lines on certain things.
Yeah.
The Middle East, I don't think we need to really intervene there anymore. We need to leave. When North Korea is actively threatening Japan, which is our ally, actively threatening us repeatedly, doesn't give a fuck. I say, fuck you, and let's go.
Yeah, they have threatened.
Tell me how
you and your allies quite a lot. So.
Well, MC, tell me how I'm wrong. Because I am wrong, right?
No, you're not necessarily wrong in your outlook. The thing is you gotta. It still has to be weighed with the fact that you're talking. A war on the Korean Peninsula is going to entail a significant loss of life. You'd better be prepared for it.
And with that, I say good night.
Good night.
All right. See you, man.
Yeah, have a good one.
And that draws me to another point when it comes to North Korea. Why can't we just finish the job when we're doing it? Why even sign the armistice at the time? Were we going to lose? Did we have to sign it?
Okay, why did we sign the armistice?
Yeah. We had pushed it almost all the way up to the China border, then China got involved and pushed us all the way back to the parallel. And that's why we signed it, because we were going to lose, right?
No. The problem, okay. The United States is the issue with Korea when it came to Korea, right, was when the Chinese came across, right, we still had an issue with a certain other belligerent nation, and that was the Soviet Union. And we were attempting to de-escalate some of Khrushchev's more violent tendencies, like the whole shoe banging thing. The speech, "We will roll over you" at the UN. All right, all these things were a concern. All right, we were attempting to create limitation talks on strategic nuclear weapons. All right, during this whole time frame. So the United States' policy when the Chinese came about was, okay, we don't want to continue this from the world's perspective. People are getting tired of this. What we'll turn this into against the Chinese is we'll see how much they can take. And they basically did a meat grinder type of tactic where what they did is they would let the Chinese mass, when the Chinese mass attacked, all right, the United States would get pushed back. But while we were getting pushed back, and the South Korean forces were getting pushed back, we were hitting them with so much artillery, all right, that they were losing, 10-1 what we were losing, all right. Plus the fact we were bombing the holy crap out of them. Now, the one country the one main adversary that we had in this region that was walking away with limited damage being done to it, of course, is the Soviet Union. So the idea that we could continue to take these kind of losses in the long term, while our main adversary in the world stage at that time, which was not China, right, was the Soviet Union. How long were we planning on sustaining that talk? Obviously, China, there's limits to how much blood and death and gore that you can suffer during these trials and everything. All right, so we were going to basically make it so bloody on them that they'd be willing to come to the peace terms. All right, and this work went on for a while till, frankly, Eisenhower got tired of it and sent an envoy over to the Chinese and said, basically, next time you walk away from the peace talks like you have this last 2 times, we're going to use nuclear weapons.
And
they never walked away again.
And Analytical Check in the comments asks, why is one ally better than another? And is directed towards you, Mad Dodge.
I never said one ally was better than another. When I say the Middle East, I'm talking about the countries we continually bomb and invade for this tribe or that tribe. I'm not necessarily talking about Israel. When it comes to Israel, though, if you want to know my stance, I would pull all foreign aid from every country, including Israel, but all of them, until we balanced our budget at home, and then we would reward our allies, including Israel. But until the American budget is balanced, I would stop all foreign aid. But other than that, I meant no anything to our best ally in the Middle East, which is Israel.
So, like, would you just rather? How should I? Would you rather just leave both issues be? Would you just let them sort themselves out, so to speak?
Well, I believe Israel could handle itself. I believe they could take Iran right now, and I think they should. Mm-hmm. And then the United States handles North Korea, and we got 2 big problems solved right there.
Okay, you think that, given the situation, given the geopolitics on the ground, you think Israel can take out Iran?
We would still be supporting them with weapons, and come on. Do you think they'd be in there alone?
Are you out of your friggin' mind?
Okay. Well, then what do you want to do about it? Why don't...
I'm not saying anything about what I want to do about it or not. But the idea that Israel,
they think Netanyahu said that he can handle them himself. He's already said that he would.
Yeah, but he's not talking about taking them out. He's talking about fighting a war with them and winning. That's something entirely different. Okay, I just wanted to.
Well, that's what I meant. I have a cry.
I may have misunderstood what you were saying there, because I thought you were saying that he could take Iran out. He can't take Iran out.
No.
And what I mean by
fight a war. I meant what Netanyahu has said. And my daughter is screaming because she was dragged inside. She wants to play, but it's dark. So I apologize. But no, what I meant is he has said himself that they can handle themselves. I say let them do it and let every other country do it. I say pull out of the UN as well. But I'm a libertarian. I say get out of all this crap that wastes our money. You know that. I mean... But when it comes to North Korea, we started that shit. Why didn't we finish it?
What do you mean
60
we started
years
that
ago?
shit?
We intervened. We put our nose in it because we wanted to stop the dirty commies. That's a fact.
So we didn't have U.S. troops rolled over when the North Koreans came south.
I'm just saying, we wanted to stop the dirty commie. We didn't.
So basically, letting U.S. soldiers that were there after the partition of World War II.
You made your bed, lie in it. You made your bed, lie in it. Now we should finish it. That's all I'm saying.
We did not invade the Koreans. Okay. That attitude is just ridiculous.
I never said we invaded. I got a screaming kid and I've been sick all weekend. Give me a break. 240. Handle some shit here. Come on. Take over for a minute, dude.
MC's right.
He knows how to play TV. Right. Come on now.
God damn it.
Well,
no, I probably misunderstood you what you're talking about. Yes, I believe that the Israelis can more or less handle themselves to a point. Although much of the quote unquote aid that we give to them is technically, even though they look at it from we put fiscal numbers to it, is actually military aid. All right, so that can't be necessarily overlooked.
Yeah, well, and I think it's rather noteworthy to say that Saudi Arabia has rather turned the cheek to Israel. That is to say, they've become a little more friendly to the existence of Israel, especially after their new ruler has kind of come into play. He's definitely had a much more liberal outlook on the situation, just in terms of his domestic policies and also acting more favorably towards Israel. Now, I don't know if you would back them up, but I mean, that's certainly one player that's off the board that you don't have to deal with, hypothetically speaking. And I mean, if we keep funding, quote unquote, moderate Islamists, he said with a straight face, if we keep on funding them, I mean, there's a good chance they could beat back, pretty decent sized invasions.
The Saudi Arabians basically at this point in time do appear to be taking a more conciliatory note with the Israelis, a less hostile attitude. Let's put it that way, right? I don't think that the Egyptians are all that hostile, although they do have they do have issues, right? But not nearly to the degree that other nations do. Jordan does not have a hostile attitude per se against Israel, right? So that leaves basically, first of all, Lebanese, right, which is basically a state that's in constant state of civil war, right? So it's basically just being run. It's basically just warlords running certain areas within Lebanon. You have Turkey, you have Syria, you have Iran. Iraq, for the most part, has enough internal fighting, internal conflicts that it wouldn't want to even get involved. So basically, you end up with three nations that you got to worry about, which is Turkey, Syria, and Iran. Right? For various different reasons, all three of them are problematic. Okay, now,
yeah.
One of the biggest problems with that when you start talking about this region is the fact that the Soviet Union, or the Russians as they are now, have always had a massive influence within the Arab states, and as a result, it has created other dynamics that necessarily wouldn't be there. The amount of pressure, however, that Russia has over certain states is different. For example, they have a lot of sway over Syria. They have almost no sway over Turkey. In fact, it's almost a hostile type of relationship between the two. And their sway over the Iranians is quite limited. All right. So between those three power players, the one that could bring the Russians into the conflict would be, directly into the conflict would be the Syrians. Bashar Assad is more concerned with just stabilizing his country.
Okay.
The leader, I think it just happened that he was.
Things calm down again. I can think. God damn it. I apologize. No, but yeah, all I meant was Benjamin Netanyahu said by his own words that he could take care of himself when it came to Iran, and he was ready to strike. Would be a better term, and conduct a war himself. And Obama had blocked him. This was quite a bit ago. I'm sure their technology has advanced since then. I'm sure they are capable of defending themselves. Matter of fact, they have proven so. That's all I was saying. But North Korea, we didn't start it. We had intervened in it. Better term. And then we just signed an armistice, and we have sat there and done nothing and let them dig in and get prepared for over 50 years. I believe we should handle that.
The reason
maybe.
The reason yeah, but the reason we haven't is the same reason we haven't jumped already. And that's China.
Fair enough. I do have a story I want to get to before 40 leaves.
Okay.
Did you check out that LA Times story about Mike Cernovich? 40 ounce?
Oh, it's in the Redeye chat, correct?
I'll just give you the link right here. But yeah, he's gonna run for Congress, I guess. So I wish Coffee was here. I'm sure Coffee would have some good comments about this. But what do you think about this? I'll let you read a little bit and give your thoughts. I'm really interested. I watch Mike Cernovich every once in a while. I think he's kind of full of shit half the time, but whatever.
Yeah. So prominent right-wing blogger Mike Cernovich says he's considering a bid for Congress in California. Okay, so it's not happening. Yeah, no, he's not going to win. That's ridiculous. Oh gosh. No, fuck off. I don't want to subscribe to the Los Angeles Times, right? Far-right activist, blogger Mike Cernovich said Thursday he's thinking about running for Congress in California this year. Quote, "It's looking like a real possibility." No, it's not. He tweeted to his more than 400,000 followers without revealing which district he might be considering. You know, here's the thing. If he wants to run for Congress in California, he might be able to do so in New California, but not California as it currently stands. That's not right. This is a stunt for attention.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I first saw that from Mundane Matt made a video on it. And he brought up some funny stuff. Like Mike Cernovich has a really interesting past, I guess. He said some off the wall shit.
Oh, really? Ah, yes, the prominent right-wing figure who was an early peddler of the Pizzagate conspiracy theory has more recently been known for giving documents to BuzzFeed that led to its report about sexual harassment settlements by Representative John Conyers. Cernovich lives in Laguna Niguel, I'm not sure how to say that actually, out of the coastal Orange County district that belongs to Representative Dana Rothbacher. I'm fucking awful with names. Who said he's unequivocally running for re-election. Yeah, I don't think that this is going to happen, to be honest. He might run against him, but I mean, honestly, this seems like a ploy for attention. If I had to guess, he doesn't stand any chance of winning.
Well, wasn't that what everybody said about Trump running for president?
Well, right, but if he was serious for actually getting into Congress, he'd run in a more conservative state. But I mean, it's just like Orange County. I mean, man, you got to understand that's next to Los Angeles, if I remember correctly.
Well,
yes, it is
kind of a purple county though, because it's got a lot of the rural. How it's been gerrymandered, it's got a lot of the rural aspects to it.
Yeah, it does, now that I'm looking at it on a map. Yeah, right next to Long Beach and San Claremont. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, man. I mean,
I suspect that you're probably right, though. This does sound more like a Brianna Wu stunt than anything else.
yeah.
Or a Kid Rock. Like, Kid Rock just pulled this shit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. So my next question would be, when is Mike Cernovich's next book coming out? That would be an interesting question.
Any day now, I bet.
Could be related. Could be related. Just saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think he stands much of a chance of winning. Although you are correct in saying that, that's what people were saying about Trump, MC. It's granted, don't discount anyone. I mean, for fuck's sake, was it Michigan, I think, that Kid Rock was running for Senate? So, I mean, he stood a pretty good fucking chance. He was definitely up there in the polls. But
yeah, I think if he was serious, he actually. The thing I think of people when they say this kind of stuff, one thing that happens is they're toying with the idea mentally, and then they make the statement, "Yeah, I'm going to run," right? And then they start to find out, "Oh my God, look at the amount of work I got to do," because campaigning isn't something you can do part time. It's not something you can go, well, today I'll fly over here, no big deal. That campaigning becomes a full-time job, and in a way that most people have never experienced. It's not just a 9-to-5 job that you can then go, okay, we're going to campaign from 9 to 5 and then go home. No, it doesn't work that way. It becomes, you've constantly got to be going from point A to point B. You're traveling, you're talking, you're having breakfast, you're having lunches, you're having dinners. Sometimes you end up in three widely dispirited areas to have all three of these kind of events going on. You've got to fundraise, you've got a back deal, when I say back deal, I'm talking about, closed door talking and discussions between the major power players. You got to deal with the whole financial aspects of it. And unless you have a staff, all right, and a really good staff that, one, works together, okay, and two, all right, you're not going to be overwhelmed from, right? It is not something that's very easy to do. One of the problems that I think a lot of modern politicians have is they let their staffs make all their choices for them, and they're nothing but an empty suit. They literally are nothing but an empty suit to what their staff tells them to do. And they like the limelight, they get all the perks that goes with it, so they really don't care, right? They themselves don't care about one policy over another policy. I honestly believe that that's the case with many of our legislators, if not all. Well,
yeah,
with some obvious exception. Right? Yeah. And I even put Rand Paul in that one, so as an exception. But
hey, good job. At least you give credit where credit's due.
The article actually at the end brings up a few interesting points. It says Cook who had served 3 terms, raised less money than a Democratic challenger last quarter, and had $828K in the bank at the start of the year. So that's a very interesting, Cook, I'm assuming, is some kind of Republican, was running against a Democratic challenger and couldn't even come up with $1 million. So that's certainly very interesting. So the question of funding comes in. And then he also, in a follow-up tweet, Cernovich said running for Congress would be, quote, utterly taxing and emotionally and financially. And that he would only run, here's the caveat, he would only run if there's, quote, a play to win. So he's only going to run if it's a guaranteed win. So that's pretty interesting.
Well, then he's not running because there's no guarantees in life. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. Well, yeah, there is no guarantees. And also, I think he might run just so he could do live streams as his campaign and rake in the fucking super chat or whatever. You know what I mean? Just fucking crowd. He could fundraise that way. And then he could show up at a few places, get the...
It would be novel to run a campaign via YouTube. It would be interesting to see how well that would work.
That's kind of what I was saying. Is he could run that way, maybe, because that's kind of how he lives anyway, right?
Yeah, that's very true. And to be honest, I think it would, putting it that way, I actually kind of do want him to run, because I do kind of want to see the comparison of ground game versus internet and slash meme game. That would be certainly pretty interesting to see which one is superior.
I mean, it would be curious to see how it would play out. I mean, it would be interesting, to say the least. I must admit that it would be interesting. Now, how it would actually play out and what all the results would be, I still think it'd be somewhat problematic personally. But
yeah, definitely. I don't think he stands any chance at winning then. And I think it's pretty obvious that he kind of gives himself a cop out by saying if there's a play to win, so
if he's looking at it from the perspective of saying if there's a path to victory, you got to remember when Trump announced, right, the first thing he of course had to do was win in the Republican primary. Right now, there's a lot of people who, of course, believe that there was absolutely no frickin' way that Trump could win the Republican primary, and the reason for that is that Trump was never polling more than never anywhere more than 50, ever getting 50% of the Republicans ever saying that they were going to support him in any way, shape, or form. Right, his support from that perspective appeared tepid. Okay, but in the primaries, you don't need to win all the. You just need to win delegates, and it's a winner take all. And you can win just by having 30% of the vote when you have so many people, in the race. So, I mean, he didn't start winning until all these other, truly winning the majority of the Republican voters in those primaries until most of the people had already dropped out and it was a two-man race.
Yeah.
So,
well, and the other thing is that you can't exactly use poll rigging as an example to dip out of the race and to say that things are unfair. I mean, nationwide, I can understand how that might come into play, but I mean, you're talking about Los Angeles, Sacramento, San Francisco. You're talking about the voting powerhouses of California that make California a blue state. And if people are out on the streets screaming, well, he's a Pizzagate neo-Nazi. I mean, let's face it; those people are going to believe them, hands down. Doesn't matter if it's true or not. I mean, these people, these kinds of people aren't going to vote for Cernovich, and thus,
they're not going to vote for a Republican.
Yeah. But would you, or not MC, but 40? You're in Cali. I know it's not your district, but would you?
Oh, would I vote for Cernovich?
Yeah.
No. No. I don't think well, first of all, I don't think he's taking it seriously enough since he's giving himself a de facto cop out. But on grounds, I don't think that, as quote unquote high energy as he is, I don't think that he has the gumption to run a state that is literally falling apart at the seams, socially and financially, that is. You're trying to you want to run a state that literally has problems holding itself together. There are people in the rural districts of California, especially in the north, that they can't stand the Silicon Valley types. And, there are all kinds of people looking for California to split up into separate states. The state of Jefferson is a great example. So to even try and run California, like if he was in charge, to even try and run California is such a task.
Is he running California? Is he running for governor?
No, sorry, I misspoke. You're right. No, he's not running California. He's more or less representing California.
Well, no, he's representing a district in California, not really the whole state, right?
Yes. But I don't think that he can do it, honestly. Unless he wants to give up being a big shot YouTube book publishing person.
Yeah, and is that even a fair trade for, you know, is it 2 years or is it 6 years or something? I don't remember.
House is 2 years.
2 years. That's what I thought.
Unless he was running for Senate, in which case he's representing the entire state.
Okay, so I was right. 2 years. I don't think he wants to like actually work for 2 years. He doesn't work now. He talks about pillows and shit. I stopped watching him. Like he's getting fucking stupid.
Yeah.
You like pillows? Is that what it is? The fluffy pillow versus the blue pillow versus the green?
No, I don't know. Like the deep state doesn't want you to sleep well. Was the last video I saw on my subscription list by him? I'm like, no, dude. No, shut the fuck up. That's worse than gay frogs and water filters.
Yeah. You know, I'm also kind of thinking about it. And to be honest, he's most likely, I don't think the Republicans are going to take him in with open arms. He's most likely going to be running against Republicans too, as a complete outsider, an independent.
Well, yeah. I mean, initially that's what he would have to, if he's going to, let's assume that he's running. He's probably going to be running as one of several vying for the Republican ticket. And so now the difference is when you talk about raising and funding and things like that, a lot of times funding will ramp up dramatically after you've secured your party's nomination. Mm-hmm. So if there's a series of runoffs ahead of that, right, that he wins, then from a funding perspective, it'll become quite a bit easier for him. The advantage he has over who's the guy that's currently there, the Republican that only has 800,000.
Oh, it's the one that Dual Hand Path is working for. Yeah, fucking shite. Hold on, I would have to check Dual Hand Path's YouTube channel.
Either way, it kind of proves my point in that nobody really knows who this is, probably outside of that district. All right. Yet Cernovich has a broader, well-known name outside of just that small little district. So he can get campaign funding from the entire nation, whereas a less well-known person is going to be stuck trying to get
nice.
Oh, it's Omar Navarro. That's who it is.
Okay, but no, I think that's a great pivot point because this is probably going to be a short red eye. I've been sick and I still kind of am, but I'm starting to feel better. But no, I wanted to talk a little bit about Austin Peterson. Now he might be the front runner to go against McCaskill, and I think that's what happened with him. Is he ran for president for the Libertarian Party, didn't get the nod, but he did get well known in Libertarian circles. Then he switched over to Republican, and he's running for the Senate in Missouri. So I think he's getting money from all around the country for a local race, and I think that's really helping him out. What do you guys think?
Well, he from what I've seen, he is certainly he's certainly a step up from Gary What is Aleppo Johnson. So if anyone seems likely to take up the Libertarian ticket in a serious manner, I think it would be Austin Peterson.
Yeah, the only thing that made me mad is he switched to Republican to run in Missouri, but I get it. That's the same thing Ron Paul did, and I got it then. Well, that was before my time, but I got it when I actually looked into Ron Paul and saw, he did run for the Libertarian Party in '88, and then, kind of retired from politics, came back as a Republican like 10 years later.
Yeah.
But
basically what you're witnessing is you're seeing the Republican Party subsume the Libertarian Party.
Well, then would the Republican Party not become the Libertarian Party if they swallow up enough Liberty candidates? That's kind of been a thought for a long time. What is actual path for the Libertarians? There's a lot of Libertarians that believe that's the way.
The Libertarians...
That's right. I went there.
The way.
That's right. I went there.
Is it the way? I don't know. Tell us, MC. Is it the way?
Well, this is the way that the larger parties operate. Is when there's third parties that start to become noticed, their points get subsumed under the larger whole of the parties generally. All right. So what you have happening in this case is you have the Republicans taking on some of the policies of the libertarians. I would disagree in a certain sense that what they're basically doing, the Republicans are basically doing, is going back to what their party initially ran on, which is smaller government, all right, and real conservative principles. When people talk about conservative principles, what is that? Well, the number one conservative principle had always been, all the way through the Reagan years, right, was smaller government. We're going to reduce the number of people in government. We're going to reduce the staff of government. One of the things that people forget about was that under the Reagan administration, that the United States did reduce total federal employees by a significant amount. They reduced these federal employees by a large amount. It didn't last, right? But they did do it. When the Republican wave took over under Bill Clinton, which people made some wrong assumptions at that time. When under Gingrich, when Gingrich came up with a contract with America and what they were going to push forward, you can say that it was a conservative agenda to a large extent because of the one big one that everyone remembers, of course, is welfare, and changing welfare from in perpetuity to you can only be on it for 2 to 3 years at a time. All right, and this was one of the major changes that he had proposed. There was and they went through the contract with America. It was not just about that, but that's the one that sticks right now, at least in my mind, at the most. However, it was still under the Gingrich administration where they began to continue to grow the size of the federal government. It's not just the scope; it's actually the number of employees within the federal government. Now, part of the reason why people didn't notice that, part of the reason why you didn't see it reflected in the cost, was at that time also is you see a very significant reduction in the number of military forces within the United States. There was a major downsize of the United States Army. There was a major downsizing of the United States Navy, which hadn't happened for a long time. The Navy got hit pretty hard with budget cuts as well. And of course the Air Force, because everybody loves flyboys, they basically got to do whatever the hell they wanted. Their bases didn't get realigned. They didn't get their shit cut like we did.
Do I sense a little animosity there?
No,
yeah.
Not at all.
No. Yeah, I didn't think so. I would never accuse you of that. But one thing I did like about Reagan, looking back on his quotes, Reagan is really libertarian in his philosophy, but it didn't really pan out in the long run. Yeah, he slashed a few things, but the deficit rose. And you say he cut a lot of budgets, but he also I thought he added to the actual amount of spending in the military. So when you say cut budget, do you mean just didn't give?
No. The budgeting got cut under Clinton.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
Under Reagan did re-increase the military budgets, all right, to deal with certain things.
That's what I thought.
That had happened, right? However, the major difference between Reagan and Clinton was the fact that Reagan always came in when Reagan came in, and when he left, the Democrats were in charge of both houses of Congress. I take that back. Right, there was a 2-year period where Reagan had the Republican Senate, all right, but the House had remained Democrat all through that time. The reason the Republicans took over the House for the first time in 40 years, right, had to do with the House banking scandal. All right, it wasn't as much due with the contract with America, but one of the things that was part of that contract with America was they were going to fix some of the abuses within Congress itself, which they also did to a degree. Okay, but that's the reason they rode that wave. They weren't riding at. There was a kind of an anti Clinton wave, all right, but for the most part, it had more to do with the House banking scandals than it.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so 40, and any thoughts on that, or should we wrap it up? Like I said, I'm not feeling too well still, so I think it's gonna be a short one tonight.
It's all good. We can wrap it up.
All right. Any last thoughts, MC?
No, I'm good.
Voice, you haven't said anything. Are you still alive?
No.
He's not here.
All right. Well, this has been the Redeye stream.
Hold on, because there's one thing. Voice, wasn't there something you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, who gives a shit about that anymore? No one listens to me anyway, so
we're all ears.
Yeah, I'm sure it was something interesting, but screw it.
I guess we're done.
Well, you see why we don't listen to you? God damn it, Voice. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, God.
I get all of you.
All right. Well, this has been the Redeye stream number 83. Have a good night, guys.